Now we start this hour with our exclusive interview with Penny Mordaunt. Your country needs you. Well, that's the message from the former Defence Secretary and the leader of the House of Commons. Penny Mordaunt has been speaking to our political editor, Chris Hope, and this is what she said when Chris asked her if, as a Royal Navy reservist, she'd be ready to fight for our country if called for war.
So, look, I have signed up to do this in the past. I have to say, Chris, if they're calling on me at any point, we are really in trouble. But look, in all seriousness, we need to be a resilient nation, and that doesn't mean stepping up to pick up a rifle. What it means is that on anything that might happen to us in the future, we want our communities to be able to respond to that. When I rewrote this nation's resilience strategy, standing up a civil defence force to be able to deal with some of the things that we currently ask our armed forces to do was part of that suggestion. And we can take pressure off our armed forces by becoming more resilient ourselves. And that is something important that we should do. You have been in this office before covering my campaign to build 3 new ships, assets, civilian assets, but for the government to have call on if they need to. That could take pressure off our fleet, our Navy. So these are the sorts of things we should be looking at doing.
Great stuff. Well, later in the hour, I'll bring you the full interview with Penny Mordaunt. She told us why she's backing also a campaign for a memorial statue to honour British soldiers who fought to end slavery. Well, I'm joined now by the man who conducted that sizzling exclusive, GBNews' political editor, Christopher Hope. And I'm also joined in the studio by the Labour MP for Birmingham, Perry Barr, Khalid Mahmood. Welcome to you both, gents. First, let's turn to you, Chris. So, HMS Mordaunt in full steam there. On good form. And the question I want to ask you is that a lot of people, including no doubt this gentleman here, are saying Penny Mordaunt is the leader the Labour Party fear the most. Why?
Yeah, the Shadow Cabinet ministers tell me that. They think, I'm not sure they're trying to stir trouble for the current incumbent, Rishi Sunak, but they think that she does connect. She is a strong leader. She has a different way, I think, of reaching out to the base, reaching maybe out from the area where Tories traditionally find support. She ran Liz Truss quite close. She was, in talks about maybe taking on Rishi Sunak when he became Prime Minister. She's someone who does have support out there, and the Labour Party do worry about her. In that answer there, she talks, unashamedly. To her, it's not a silly question to ask, will you fight for your country? Because she is a naval reservist. She is trained in this stuff. She knows about sacrifice, and she talks about, quite in a grown-up way, really, about a civil defence force ensuring that if our telecom structures are taken out, we can restore them ourselves and work together to help protect this country. But I think she's. I did ask her about the speech she made at the dispatch box last week, when she listed all of the qualities of Rishi Sunak, and she sees it as a Labour line of attack against the PM, not one. I said, but it's a Tory MP saying it, Penny, not Labour. She said, well, that's on policy. They think that he should be leader. So she's been very loyal in public. OK, Khalid Mahmood, let's turn to you now. A Labour MP that was in here last week said, yeah, Penny Mordaunt, she might give us a bit of trouble. What is it about Penny Mordaunt that gives you guys the collywobbles?
I think, first of all, her presence. If you look at the coronation of the King, where she held the sort of state, my wife absolutely loved her dress. It was absolutely fantastic.
That's all that counts.
So it's rising to the occasion. That's the key thing. Yeah. She's been able to rise to the occasion. As Chris has said, she's a naval reservist. She's got all the right credentials, and you want somebody who's connected to the people. And I think for that reason, it'll be good to have her as the leader of the opposition when we come into government.
Can I ask you about a superb line that Chris gets? Is this erecting of a statue at Portsmouth Harbour? Of course, that's where she's an MP, for the West African Squadron, the so-called preventative squadron, who took to the seas to help end the slave trade. Now, the slave trade is something that the Labour Party, the Liberal left, like to weaponise against Britain, our so-called shameful role in slavery. Do you think that erecting a statue to mark Britain's involvement in ending slavery is appropriate?
Well, I think it is. It was a horrendous trade, and what we did and what those soldiers did, in order to bring that to an end, I think needs to be celebrated, needs to be pointed out. We've moved on for the next 150 odd years that we've had now, and we want to move on further forward and integrate. We are now integrated, and we should remember our history. The important thing of the United Kingdom is there's been ups and downs in history, but all our people, young people growing up, should know those ups and downs.
A lot of critics of this statue might say that it's Britain slave washing, it's dirty past. Do you think that certain people from your side of the political spectrum who like to rip down statues, has to be said, might take umbrage to this?
Well, no, as I've said before, this is our history. We have to recognise the good and the bad of our history. Our children must understand that so we don't go back there again. And I think this is an issue that we need to discuss, and it's important that we do that in a serious environment.
OK, can I turn to you now on other matters? Immigration figures out today. It's predicted 6 million more to come to the UK by 2036, a 10 million boost, 74 million. And we've all been agreeing, can Britain cope with this? And so the big question is, do the Labour Party want to do anything about this? A lot of people think Labour Party will be an open borders party when you guys get in.
Well, absolutely not. One of the things I'll tell you that I'm doing in my constituencies, I'm speaking to the DWP and getting more of our young people, those that don't finish education in schools, getting them trained and getting them into employment. One of the key things is that we have to get our young people into training and employment. We're not doing that. The government hasn't supported us with that, and I'm trying to do my best to be able to get there. And if we do that, we'll have less immigration coming through, and what we'll have is, but we do have an issue of longevity of life for the older people now because of medicine and improvements that we've got in our National Health Service. So that will add to that. But what we need to do is to support our own people to get the jobs that we need.
Well, can I ask what Labour would do in terms of net migration? Now, the government's going to try and do measures to bring down net migration to maybe 400,000. Would Labour go less than that? These forecasts are saying there'll be up to 73 million people living here by 2036. Yeah. What would a Labour government do? Would it try and bring it down below 100,000 like the Tories tried to do and failed? Well,
I think what Labour will do, and this is a key thing that I am certainly hopeful for with the Shadow Chancellor and the Business Secretary and DWP Secretary of State, is to look at how we can further engage with our people, young people, into employment and take those jobs up. But there will be a need for some skilled trades to come in, and the more of our own people we train, the less of those people will come in.
And what's your number, though, to ask you?
I would certainly be very happy with less than 100,000, but we need to work at that, and we need to put training, we need to proper resources into those places to get those young people working.
Do you want that in your party manifesto?
Well, I certainly would like, and I think the Labour Party is moving towards that, yes.
And that's an astonishing thing. You're basically agreeing with Nigel Farage on the sorts of numbers.
I don't agree with much with Nigel Farage, but I have a conversation with him. But what this is about, what Nigel's coming from a different perspective, my perspective, is that we need to get our young people into education and training so they can take those jobs, reduce those figures of unemployment with people with no qualifications, get that through, and get our people back into work properly.
OK, Kenny, let's talk about some more figures. There's the furious sound of backpedalling, as far as I can see it, about this 28 billion quid that the Labour Party keeps pledging to green issues, to net zero issues. And when Rachel Reeves is probed on where the money is going to come from today, she now says this is an ambition. Well, I've got an ambition to be an astronaut.
Well, I think you and I are a bit difficult to get there for the age factor. But apart from that, I think what she's saying is quite right. We have to pick up the tab after this government has left. We have to see what's in the coffers and what we can do. And it would be irresponsible for Rachel to say, give a complete commitment. We want to do this. This is how we're going to sort our energy issues.
But that sounds like flip-flopping. It sounds like vagary. It sounds like paying lip service to net zero and green issues and then realising actually the biscuit tin is going to be completely empty and you can't afford it. And that is what people often and repeatedly say is the Labour Party's problem. You can make massive promises, but there's no money to fund them.
But the problem is that this government has emptied out the tin. And so what we're going to have to do is look at that, how quickly we can place the cash in the tin and get those very, very ambitious projects on the road.
Well, totally. I mean, the problem is the concern is going to be you are going to have to wind that down. When will you hit that figure, 28 billion? Will it be in the second half of the next Parliament?
Well, I think it would look... I'm not on the front bench, so take my view as you want. But certainly, in terms of that, yes, we would look to do that. Engineering is a huge potential, especially green engineering. It'll bring more of our people into employment. And the quicker we do that, it's not about 28 billion being wasted. It's about first for energy, second for employment, and that would be a good thing to do.
Today, the International Monetary Fund has waded in, sticking its nose into Britain's taxation policy, saying Jeremy Hunt shouldn't cut taxes because it won't mean that there's enough in the bank to make sure we fulfil our net zero targets. A lot of people in France, we've been seeing, are getting fed up of net zero targets. British people are getting fed up of the notion, many that contact this show, that it's making them poorer, it's making them colder, it's making them hungrier. And yet Labour seems stapled onto this notion of outdoing the Conservatives on net zero. Is that the right route to follow?
Well, look, my personal view is there are issues in relation to some of the car ambitions that some of the people have had, putting huge amount of taxation on individuals and people who can least afford that. I'm not for that. I've been against it, not now, almost for the last 10 years in relation to that. We need to move forward and we need to look at how we can support through this living crisis with people that we have.
And yet in Birmingham, the council's ripping up car parks. It's making it very, very difficult for people to get around your city. There's already a clean air zone in Birmingham. Birmingham is following Sadiq Khan's lead and waging war on motorists.
Well, I was against the clean air zone and I made as much of a protest as I possibly could. And I'm continually not happy about this news that has come out. And I will oppose that as much as I can. We need to get our most vulnerable people who need a car, not for leisure or pleasure, who need their cars for their livelihoods and employment, and we want to get them involved.
Okay, great stuff. Well, I think a lot of people would agree with that. But then, again, it comes back to trust. We had Angela Rayner on television saying the clean air zone will come to every town and city near you under a Labour government. Can the voters trust you on this?
Look, what the voters are trusting you at the moment, at the last general by-election that we had for Boris Johnson's, ranging from that...
People voted against you,
Sir Keir understood the feeling of the people, and he wants to look at this in a very different way, and that's important.
What they want is a pragmatic approach, don't they?
Yeah.
They don't want to have just a sort of dogma driving policy, but to listen to maybe in the Eurozone it's white van men and women who can't get to work with their tools.
And these are the kinds of people that are phoning Sadiq Khan in London saying they can't afford to go to work, they can't afford to feed their kids in this war on motorists. Khalid Mahmood, if the Labour Party can be trusted on that, it will be a vote winner, surely, but there's a feeling that's not the case.
Well, Sir Keir has made a statement on this after the election, by-election, and what we want to do is move forward and look at that and see where it applies. Where there are sufficient air quality, which is good enough to deal with that, we should then look at whether these issues are needed. There are different categories of clean air zones. D in Birmingham is the most stringent that they have, but there are lesser quality zones that we can look at.
OK, speaking common sense, Khalid Mahmood, MP for Perry-Barr Birmingham, thank you very much. And, of course, Chris Hope, always a pleasure. And a reminder that we'll bring you that full exclusive interview that this fella did with Penny Mordaunt a little later in this hour. And there's plenty of coverage on our website, GBNews.com. You've helped to make it the fastest growing national news website in the country. So thank you very much.